This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. Now you're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. This evening I'm joined by Gerry McGowan and Cathal Clancy to look back on Galway's defeat at the weekend, unfortunately, to Dublin. Created the chances but just came up short on Saturday night, so all attention now switches to the Kerry game this weekend, and Galway will be hoping to get a victory there, which will put them into the league final if they can get a win this weekend. Carl, just coming to you first, interesting, obviously we had the first round of the league at the weekend for a lot of clubs. It was the experience for the new rules competitively. How was that element of it for Mike Cullen at the weekend?
Really good, Paul. I suppose, like a lot of us, we've been waiting to get out and get a bit of competitive action under our belts under the new rules, and we have played a couple of challenges up to now. But I suppose with the way the weather has turned good in the last week, and Saturday being a pretty decent day, it was great just to get out, play the rules in the good weather. And for us, it was we got a win under our belt. So I suppose you can't ask for too much more. But I suppose between looking at all the inter-county games since January and reading all the columns and listening to all the podcasts and everything, you are wondering all throughout the winter and into the early spring, what it's going to be like to actually play. But I have found anyway at the weekend and in the couple of challenges we played, I found that it's been pretty much easy to adapt to the new rules. Some of the things take a little bit more getting used to the others, but by and large, everyone's playing them in the right spirit. Refs, I found refs very good in the few challenges, and in our games at the weekend, found them really good. So yeah, we're just delighted to be up and running, and I think that the changes have definitely made a good difference.
Is it a big help, Carl, for you this year, only having Sean and James away?
Yeah, we've had big numbers either involved in county panels or being away over the last few years. Now in saying that, we still would have obviously we've Sean and James involved the county team, but we've two lads, Sean O'Connor and Owen Maguire in the under 20s. The likes of Peter Cook and Micheál Riley still living abroad, and there's going to be guys coming and going all throughout the year, and I think every club has that going on. So we're definitely stronger in numbers than we have been in other years for the start of the league, anyway, which is a huge help. But like a lot of clubs, there'll still be numbers to get back as the year rolls on.
Just finally then, Carl, we were only chatting about it, myself and Maurice Brosnan, on the podcast there 2 weeks ago. Owen Gallagher and his contribution to Mike Cullen, he's obviously went back to his home club now in Antrim, but what he did for your club over the last few years is massive, isn't it?
Huge. Owen was a massive part of our club, not just the team, but the club over the last few years. He was taken into the hearts of everyone in the place. He was living locally there, and he'd be down at everything, and he was just a great club man. And even so much so that, like, I don't know, sometimes people don't realize he well okay, he's a doctor. I think that's well known, and they would find it hard enough in terms of hours and rotas and all that to be playing football. But Owen has been living in Dublin the past 2 years and coming down to play for us, his adopted club. So like that in itself is a massive commitment. And then what he did for us on the pitch was just brilliant, really. Like he was a driving force for our team over the last five seasons he played with us, and he was just absolutely brilliant. So much so he got called in to play with Galway, which we all were delighted to see, and probably would have hoped to see a little bit more of him actually on the pitch at times playing. But I was chatting to him after the county final this year, and look, he comes from a big family with a great GA tradition up in Antrim, with a club that it's easy for us to think of him as ours, but at the end of the day, we can't forget that he was raised and trained and coached all the way up by his own club, and I think he has a number of brothers there, and there was pressure to to come back and line out with them, and we fully understand and support him, and it's actually less travel as well, even to be going up the road from Dublin to Antrim. But like, look, a fella like Owen that in the profession he's in, you would never know when he'd be back down in Galway again and in the green and white in my Cullen. I wouldn't rule it out, but for now anyway, he's a major, major loss to us, but will be very, very fondly remembered.
Uh, Gerry, for yourself, you've obviously now gone in with Kerfin. Still early days. You played your first league game at the weekend as well. You bet out Gerard. How has it been getting involved with a club like Kerfin?
Yeah, look, obviously very early days. Uh, they're obviously a very big club, great history. But again, for me, it's probably getting in there now and spending a bit of time with them now and figuring out who's who and getting to know the lads and getting to know strengths and weaknesses and all that kind of stuff. So, but so far so good. As I said, we haven't done an awful lot so far, and we had our first league game on Friday evening there, and that went okay. So, but again, like Carl said, we're just trying to get out there now, and a lot of hype around the rules, and then there was a small tweak there just before that last game, where we were probably spent the last few weeks coaching 12v11s and all that kind of good stuff, and then we kick off with a different set of rules. So I mean, uh, again, just I suppose it's nice to get that sort of first league game gone. We learn a bit from it. We see new players and all that kind of stuff. But again, just trying to get to know the lads and looking forward to the next few league games now.
You've obviously gone in as coach Declan O'Keefe too in the backroom team, Alan O'Donovan and Craig Higgins and Gary Delaney manager. How did it come about for you?
Yeah, I suppose I over the years I spent 10 years living in Galway back in the day, and I probably would have got to know a good few of the Carfin lads just through one thing or another. I trained with Galway back in 2000 for maybe 4 years and got to know some fellas there, and probably kept in touch with the likes of Dave Morris and that through different things, which he does a bit of stats and the reporting and that kind of stuff, and we would have used him quite a lot with Clare and maybe then used them with other teams. So kind of, always had a sort of a link there. Always would have been in touch with lads down there, and would have been sort of keeping a close eye there the last few years. Kevin Johnson there, Sligo man, would have been managing them. We'd have great time for Kevin, and we would have known each other. Would have coached with his dad back in 2010 with the Sligo under 21. So we kind of know the family quite well. And but yeah, look, and again, obviously, Carfin are never too far from the headlines over the last 10, 15 years. But look, again, me and Gary kind of got speaking about a different project earlier in the year, and we kind of got to know each other a little bit, over and back. And then when he got the job, then I was involved with Cullara and Sligo, and he just said, "Look, would it be something of interest?" And as I said, he sort of hadn't his management team, in place, and he was sort of looking around, and then we met up and we had a chat, and we kind of went through couple of different things, and I like Gary's style, and obviously he's been successful with Dunmore the last 3 years, and he's played the game at a very high level. So our football philosophies were aligned, but again, it was very hard to align philosophies around rules and stuff when nobody knew where they were going to end up or how things were going to play out. But again, I like Gary's approach to it, and yeah, it just sort of fell into place then.
Yeah, Gary really has kind of earned his role, hasn't he? You consider what he did with Dunmore over the last few years was massive, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah. Look, I mean, I wasn't that close to sort of go with football. I suppose, I didn't really sort of, I hadn't been watching it too closely, but I suppose, Gary's name would have cropped up a few times through challenge games. We were with Boyle there last couple of years, and we played Dunmore in a couple of challenge games, and I think we played them over in Boyle one evening, and I think they had to put one of their midfielders back in goals, and he spent the time up the field. This was before new rules, and they played just a nice brand of football. They had the whole defensive thing going. They were transitioning well, and you knew they were very well coached. And I suppose when you sit down with Gary, and he's very passionate about the about coaching and how to sort of teams should play, and ideas and innovating and all that kind of stuff, which is exciting. So, and he's a young manager, and obviously from a club steeped in a lot of history, and so yeah, look, exciting times for him. I'm sure big job to move into now in his his home parish, and I'm sure he's excited about it too.
So if we do look at the Galway Dublin game on Saturday night. Dublin 219, Galway 213. Galway's first defeat of the National Football League. Carl, what do you take away from Saturday night with Galway's defeat to Dublin?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I suppose looking back straight away afterwards, I kind of thought, geez, that's a Galway game. Could have and should have won. It felt like they'd kind of kicked it away. And I watched it back then again, and for me, a critical that first half really is where it seemed to get away from Galway, and it was like I think it was like 10 minutes gone, it was 2 points apiece, and then with 20 minutes gone, it was 1-8 to 2 points, and Dublin just seemed to kind of, I suppose, take their chances in that 10-minute period, and Galway kicked a few wides or dropped them short at that point, and from that point on, they were always chasing it, and in the second half, then I suppose you have Shane Walsh is gone. I know Comer came on and Conroy went off at the same time. Dylan McHugh comes off. So it seemed like all were a bit diluted in the second half. And even though they had the purple patch with the 2 goals and the 2-pointer, it just it didn't seem to click for them really. I think in that last 20 minutes, I was looking back at it today, and from when they got the second goal, they only scored 2 points in the last 20 minutes after that. And that was 2 points that Damien Comer got in a 60-second burst. So probably, one that I'd say Galway will look back and regret a bit, because if they take any of those chances in that first quarter, obviously the Rob Finnerty's goal chance was a huge one. If they take those chances at the start, it feels like it could have been a slightly different game. But once with these new rules, the Crow Park pitch, which I think we've almost got 3 games. We've got the old game, we've got the new rules, and then you've got the new rules in Crow Park, which that was my first proper game in Crow Park of the new rules this year in the league to have a look at it. I wasn't at it now, I watched it on telly. But I just feel that always Crow Park football is almost a different brand of football anyway. And with these new rules now, it just seemed to be up and down.
Really isolates the cornerback for the
Oh
one-on-one.
God, I mean, I know Galway there's some excellent one-on-one defenders, but like, what do you do if you're facing a Con O'Callaghan one-on-one, or even on the other end, Jamie Comer? Like, I mean, it's going to suit Galway as well. But I just felt that first half, there's a missed opportunity there, because ultimately, if you get that win on Saturday, you're into a league final and you can plan the next few weeks differently. Now they've kind of a bit of a headache around selection and injuries and trips to New York and all those kind of things. But yeah, it was probably just a little bit disappointing in the end, given the missed chances, and then probably just a little bit of a fade out in the second half, from my point of view, anyway.
Gerry, what did you think? Because it was the opening 4 games really good. Tyrone game was probably a bit patchy where they got that draw, and they probably were fortunate to get the draw in the end. But then the last 8, it, you could nearly tell from early on when Galway missed a few chances that they were slightly off in this game in the first half.
Yeah, it's funny because one of my criticisms of the rules, and I like the rules by and large, is that the weather conditions can sort of play a huge part in the 2-pointers. So if you're up or you're down, we'll say at halftime, if you're going into the second half, you know what you have to do, and you can go after 2-pointers if you've got the breeze and stuff. I think this weekend across the board was the first weekend we didn't have those weather conditions that were going to sway the result by the 2-pointers. The 2-pointers are going to be scored based on skill, you know what I mean? And we didn't see a whole pile of them across the board. You do probably need the elements to sort of help you with that sort of 2-pointers. If you get a score with a 2-pointer without any breeze, it's some kick. And Galway have probably, been very good throughout the league so far with those 2-pointers, and they've probably had the scoreboard up around 20 points based on those 2-pointers, and especially with Shane Walsh, he's kicking what 3-4 of them, and him going off. I thought the last day was probably a big loss, and uncharacteristically sort of dropped that free kick short just before half time. It looked like he was carrying a bit of a knock, and then as you said, Cathal, that sort of missed goal from Rob Finnerty another day that goes in the game's back nearly level, and maybe looked like the harder Rob Finnerty was trying the last day, the worse it was getting for him. And in fairness to Porrick, he made a big call pulling him off and getting him off the field early, and bringing in new forwards, and obviously then sort of Damien Comer coming in, and Paul Conroy coming off. So they never really got their sort of main men on the pitch at the same time, which for Galway, another day they could have had all those guys on. They could have brought Damien on, at a point where, they could have gone on to win the game, and he would have got that. What did he get? 1-2, I think, within maybe
Yeah,
5 or 10 minutes of coming on, and that could have been where they could have just drove them over the line tactically. You know what I mean? That injection of closing the game out. So they didn't get that chance to have Conroy and Shane and sort of Comer on together, which another day they could have and probably could have won the game. So I wouldn't. It's probably just one of those days things just didn't line up for them, and the few knocks and stuff didn't sort of go their way, but. Still for me, Galway are impressive. They are playing these rules very well. They've got a great skill level across the field, and I think when everything just clicks for them, I think, and they get everybody on the pitch together, they're going to be some force with these rules.
The quotes after the game from Porrick, they missed about 210 between them. Um, we had to get someone to try and score on the pitch. Like, what did you make of that?
I actually, because when I was watching it back, I was like, geez, 210 now sounded a lot. And I do think from the television you could see Shane Walsh had definitely hurt something. I wouldn't say it was that bad, but you could see from him at one point, about 33rd minute, he has the ball, he's hand passing, he just kind of pulls up and he grimaces, and he kind of hit it over to the side, and he didn't get too involved after that, and you could see he was definitely favouring something, and like I was looking through it, and I think Galway had about, I think it was like 13 scoring chances in the first half that they didn't take, which is massive, and like there was obviously Rob Finnerty's goal miss. Although I don't know, was that down to Shane Walsh after Rob Finnerty's punch? Maybe more Rob Finnerty, but either way, anyway, that was definitely one. And Matthew Tierney's one towards the end of the first half as well. Like that, a Dublin defender gets a boot to that, hits the post. Like on another day, that's a goal as well. But they'd like six wides, four drop short, and a blocked effort in that. And I think Rob had maybe, I think he had two wides and two drop short, and Shane had he had one dropped. He had a wide at the start. He had one that was blocked, and then the free as well. He seemed to be almost distracted with the free. I was watching him. He was calling lads up to press, and he was nearly more concentrated. For me, anyway, I can see why Rob Finnerty was taken off. I just don't think he's gonna have that bad a day again for the rest of the season. But for Shane, I think it was probably some niggle, and hopefully they can get that right now as the rest of the season moves on,
And I
because
think
we
I
don't
think
want
all
him
those
injured.
I think all those drop short, Cathal, are kind of criminal, really. Like if you drop the ball short as a turnover, there's a good chance there's going to be a shot off the other side, and
Yeah,
it
yeah,
it
yeah.
takes the balance of play sort of out of it. So those points go over, you're out for the kick out, you're into a 50-50 situation where, the keeper catches it under crossbar. I mean, they break
Mm,
Dublin's transition was actually, in fairness, got to give
mm.
Dublin credit here too. Like they came with the bit between their teeth now, and they looked much better than they've been. And again, they look very very formidable in Crow Park. They just at the speed and the pace that they're breaking. And they got those two goals at really good times, and their finishing was sort of top class. But again, you have to look at Con O'Callaghan. He's just back into the team there. He's sort of making everything tick again. But like again, you're right. Another day, I don't think anything like that. Rob Finnerty couldn't have a day like that again. And but you got to be taking those chances or putting them wide at least, not allowing those
Yeah.
sort of counter transitions on you, or else they're
I think I think
you're
with
pretty much
Dublin
giving
too
up.
as well, they're moving, as you said, they're moving the ball so fast and then transitions, and they have serious athleticism. The centre back Sean McMahon, there was one point he was chased. I think when Daniel O'Flaherty got the 2 pointer, if you watch, Sean McMahon is chasing him the other side of the field, but he is sprinting flat out like Bugler. It's some of these guys they have serious athleticism. They're used to playing in Crow Park every second week for the league. Those are all advantages. It's just one of them games that you would feel that Galway, if they had the shooting boots on in the first half and keep that a tighter game, it's slightly different game in the second half. But in terms of the two boys and Porrick Choice, like look, he's right. The chances were being missed, and in Rob's case anyway, I'd say he was hooked, and in Shane Walsh's case, I think it probably was more down to injury. But hopefully that's not too bad.
Uh, Gerry, on the chances created from a management perspective, can Galway take positives that those chances were created?
I think so. Look, I think with 11v11, I think there's going to be chances. I think the shots, are going to be there. I think, we were talking about the one-on-ones earlier. I think they're going to appear pretty much every time you cross the halfway line. And I think the teams that are the most clinical and the most sort of, I suppose, intelligent holding the ball and, taking the shots at the right time from the right angles are probably going to win out in this. And the Dublins, the Kerrys, the Galways, like it's no fluke that Shane Walsh is sort of top scorer. I think he's top scorer in the league. I mean, he's what, 137 or something like that. He's the most two-pointers. I mean, it's just going to play into the hands of the really good footballers, and again, if there's a little bit of a breeze or anything like that, it's going to play into the hands of the sharpshooters that, can kick the two-pointers and the free takers. So look, I think for sure, I think 11v11, I suppose I'd love that space now, and teams that are good on that transition and can hold the ball well, I think are pretty much going to get a shot off pretty much on every transition. So, and that's the key challenge now. And then obviously keeping that shooting efficiency high, and I mean it's going to be a great spectacle. I think once championship hits and teams are sort of conditioned now to go at it hard.
The conditioning piece too, Gerry, will be important because the last 10 minutes was kind of carnage on Saturday night. It was turnover after turnover. Conor Callan or Cormac Castro, someone a big high shot up in the air, just like you could see visibly guys are tired, and the decision making starts to reflect that. And obviously that middle eight, the serious work. I mean, John Maher, Sean Kelly, Killy McDade, they covered ridiculous ground. But like in big championship games, come the little bit of heat that we do get in June, July, in big games in Croke Park, I'd say the last 10, 15 minutes of games is going to be crazy. Like it's going to be end to end, there's going to be space, but the as the fatigue sets in, your decision making in that last 10, 15 minutes. I suppose last year the championship turned into a bit of a kind of a stalemate for 45, 50 minutes in so many games and started to open up. And you would just see this year now, obviously, it's going to be a more extensive game. There's going to be more running. There's going to be more open football throughout. But I think that last 10 minutes could be crazy, And I think that's where the likes of Galway's squad and the panel that they've developed in the last kind of 18, 24 months will really stand to them.
And just doing the numbers in my head now, not having any sort of plans or anything, I can only imagine that teams are going to have to start doing a little bit of heavy training in the next week or two
Mm.
if they haven't already started. And you might see that affect them a little bit come the end of these last two games, because if they don't start that block of heavy work now, they're not going to get it done into the championship, because I mean there's such a small gap. So that you'll see maybe one or two teams just get affected by that, where maybe the teams that started early, they're probably just going to have to go back into the heavy phase now for the next 2 to 3 weeks. I remember, I think we talked about this the last time we were on. We talked about Galway's performance against Sligo in Markovich, but they were probably going through a really, really tough phase. Now, Sligo really played well, were top of their game that day and should have won. But you'd expect teams now to be hitting that heavy, heavy work now, so that when they're in their sort of Connacht semi-finals now, it sort of helped them. Connacht final stage, they're probably planning for that now, and the business end of the championship.
Even as we mentioned the first half, Colin, even if you look at the scores, Galway trailed in the first half 1-8 to 2 early on, 1-9 to 5, 1-10 to 6 at halftime. That first half really just it began to cut up with Galway because they just left themselves with too much to do in that game, really.
Yeah, and I think, look, any day you're leaving chances behind you like that, and in a number of them too, Dublin went down the far end and got their score on their attack. That was, I suppose, that was the real killer. But like, I suppose for Galway too, they're going to have to. It's great to have Comer back. That's, I think, every fan across the country is delighted to see Damien Comer back, especially Galway fans. But like, there's going to be days between Comer, Finnerty, and Walsh. We know from their injury profile, it's going to be hard to always have the three of them on the pitch at all times. And given the new game, then there's going to just be, people are going to start tiring and they're going to have to be replaced. So I suppose for Galway, they're really what you'd be hoping to get out of the league this year would be one or two extra inside forwards that would add to the scoreboard. Would say I thought Matthew Thompson did well now
Yeah.
the last day. I know he had a point. He'd one ruled out by Hawkeye, and you know the why. But I thought he did well. Liam O'Canila did well. Killian O'Carron did better probably in earlier rounds. And I suppose that's as well where you want these guys tested in Croke Park against the likes of Dublin, because ultimately, you want to find a player at this point in the league now that can do something for you in a quarter final or semi final. But yeah, like look, Galway will regret that first half probably. But I do think between Comer coming back, getting more and more game time into some of these lads, there's a huge amount of positives out of it as well. And don't forget as well, I think every Division One team at the start of January would take getting to round six and being free of relegation. That's ultimately, you can debate all day long. Do you want to be in the league final or not at this stage? And we'll probably talk about that. But just the big thing you want to do is you want to get to round six and be say we're free relegation. And Galway have achieved that and achieved it handsomely.
It's interesting, Carl, the point you're making there about the inside forwards. We've all been talking about how competitive the squad and everything is, but it's fairly open for that player to kind of break through
Mm.
into that inside forward role.
Yeah, I think in the back line we've some brilliant one-to-one defenders, and I think Daniel O'Flaherty is playing really well as well. I know he's able to come forward with the ball, but he's played really well inside. And then in the middle eight, that's just where Galway have an unbelievable amount of choice now. I mean, Finian O'Lee hasn't even got a look in the last. I don't know, is it through injury or what in the last couple of games? But I thought he did quite well in the first few rounds. The O'Neills, like there's so many guys putting their hands up there to add to what we've got in that middle sector, and we do have players like Matthew Tierney and other guys that can drift into that front three. And I know Sam O'Neill and some guys were being kind of played in there as a big man, but like going back to it again between Rob and Damien and Shane Walsh, you would be looking for just if you could have one other coming away with three, four, five scores a game at championship level. That's what Galway would really love to add to this now. And I do think the raw talent is there. Will we see it happen in this year's championship? It's hard to know yet. I suppose sometimes a player like that needs to kind of go out and do it in the early rounds of the championship, get their chance and kind of stay in the team. But I do feel that's one area like that. We'll say if we look at Dublin on the other end, I'm very impressed with Luke Brannock the few times I've seen him this year, like geez, he 4 points scored the last day by the 20th minute or something. So it's something like that you're looking for, someone that could come in at the business end and get an important 2 pointer or kick a few points and take a bit of attention off Shane Walsh or Damien Comer or Rob Finnerty.
Yeah, because Gerry, even looking at the makeup of the Galway starting 15 last night, 12 of the All Ireland final winning team from last year. Jack Glynn comes on, Damien Comer comes on, Sean Mulcairn wasn't part of the 26. I don't know, was that down to injury? But like to even have 12 of their All Ireland winning team out on Saturday night starting.
Yeah, look, it's an impressive team to be fair, and
Mm.
an impressive panel of players. Like, and you just look at the caliber of them, and I think I agree with you, Cathal. Daniel O'Flaherty, superb player. I mean, he's like I spotted him actually last year against Sligo. He played really well. He had a good year last year. Thought he was brilliant the other night. I thought Johnny McGrath was really good. I thought
Yeah,
he played his real Tigerish self. So at the back, and I think they've really good sort of without having the numbers here, but having their defensive record has been really good, and I think they've given up the 2 goals the other night, which they'll be a bit disappointed with. Where they were solid at the back and maybe giving away those 2 goals, they'll probably say, right, okay, well that's something we probably just need to brush up on. But and the other end, I think things that have been going well for them, they've been scoring quite heavily, kicking probably 20 points in most games, and they only got to 13, we'll say, and the 2 goals. So I think they'll be disappointed with those two things. But I think they're both within their control, and I think they'll sit down and they'll review, I suppose the different things. And again, not to go over it again, but the different things that didn't go right for them. And, as Park said, maybe 210, they could have scored. Another night they could have won by 6 instead of losing by 6. You know what I mean? So I think it was just maybe a couple of things. I think Dublin came hungry. I think they needed to win. And I think just a few things didn't go right for Galway, and they just didn't get the players on the pitch the way they probably would have hoped. And maybe, keeping Damien in reserve just to kind of come on and close the game out would have probably worked on another evening. But, with so many gone off, and before he came on, I mean, and again, I agree with you, Cathal. I think Damien is just. I think once you get it, get him fit and on the pitch, I think he's just. These rules are just going to suit him, because I don't
Yeah.
think there's a player in the country that can hold him off. We'll say in a one-on-one situation. I think that particular piece, is going to bode well for him. But he could also come out to the 40 and sort of win kickouts. He could do so much. You could take him, even if he wasn't one of the top three. He could come out to the middle eight and just sort of win kickouts and
Yeah.
sort of maybe attack from deep there. So he's just, I think a lot of this game will sort of fall into place. But again, the hitting championship now, they've got to change gears and they've got to get all the players fit. So, and if they make the league final, I think that'll probably be something they would like to do, considering they're playing New York. And I think they'd like to have that. Well, again, I don't know for sure, but I think they'd like to have that game maybe, and then go to New York and sort of deal with that over there. No disrespect to New York, but they should be able to sort of deal with that threat over there and come back. Then maybe, a few days training in New York will help them as well, and then to recover, and then they should be setting themselves up then for a big kind of championship then.
Is the biggest positive, Gerry, the way they did battle back in the second half, even got it back to 213 to 211. Now I know Dublin went on in that kind of last quarter to drive it home and win by 6, but even the way Galway did battle back in that second half.
Yeah, but and again, if you look at all the games, one thing that's baffled me is that no game has ever been a home and hosed
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
No game, and I don't think there's a situation that I've seen and I've seen a couple of Sligo games, and I've seen a few games in Division 2 and 3, and there has been no game that has sort of, you could say, like there was 8 points maybe with 10 minutes to go, and it's always come back to me a draw or a loss or something. So
Even Armagh the last night against Kerry, they
yeah.
started kicking 2 pointers and or sorry, it was Gerry Connor Glass and just kicking 2 pointers, and the next thing, a game that looked out of sight was suddenly back in the mixing pot. So you're right, Gerry.
And it's a real mental thing, I think, for players, because even as management, Carl, this, you'll see the game, 10 minutes to go, 8 points up, you're kind of saying, right, and I think players before mentally would have just said, right, we can take the foot off the gas. There's not much they can do here. But again, 3 kicks, the game is back to 2, and then a goal in the mix, you're down by 1. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's not unrealistic. And again, the elements will play a big part in that scenario. But so I think there's going to be a lot of sort of maybe mental work with players to sort of focus the mind on, just that fact alone. Or when you're making subs, they're so much more important now. They're not going in just to get their last 10 minutes as a token gesture to come off the bench or that. They're
Yeah.
going in now to really close the game out, and whatever strategies teams come up with, or scenarios that they'll play out like that, they've got to just work them into it mentally to say, right, the game is never done, and that urgency nearly has to go up now with 8 points up, to rather than see the game out and sort of be complacent. So yeah, look, just those small little tweaks will, I'm sure they'll play out. I'm sure a team's going to get caught somewhere in the championship, senior level, before the year's out. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that.
It's probably nearly a common team call of the Galway performance. Even John Mayer probably he gets fortunate for that goal. Damien's goal was a terrific highlight reel for Galway fans. But start of that second half, Liam O'Connell gets a point, but there was even 2 or 3 misses at the very start of that second half that just they
There
all
was,
kind
yeah.
of
They stopped the momentum. Yeah, there was. Yeah, even the one Key Darcy catches, he gets bottled up. He's nearly in for a goal. There was, there was Liam O'Connell had 2 wides. There was Daniel McFarty hit the post as well. Do you remember he was running in on goal? That's nearly a top corner effort. Like,
That's nice, yeah.
even Damien came on, his first shot was wide. So look, I think myself. Look, these are all things that Galway will regret in one sense. There was an opportunity there to beat Dublin, but like ultimately for this team now at this stage, having lost the All Ireland final in 22 and 24, like there's only one thing they really want, and I know they'd love to get to a league final and win it, but like I was up at the league final last year between Armagh and Donegal was on first, and then Gerry and Dublin was on afterwards. And I came out of there, and I was I was saying, oh Jesus, Dublin and Gerry they're right up there, like maybe themselves and Kerry were the reigning champions at the time. It was early April. Galway had just come off the back of a lot of guys missing, doing well to stay in Division One, and like I couldn't for a moment believe if you told me Dublin and Gerry wouldn't get to the All Ireland semi-finals and Kerry wouldn't be in the final. Like I just, so much can change. We will look back in the business end in mid-July, and these kind of games and what happened will seem so insignificant and in the distant past. And I think for Galway, really big positives are, getting big games out of like Daniel Farty, these guys that are probably in the panel or in the team the last couple of years, but you want to see them pushing on, getting Damien back, and just I suppose even I thought Matthew Tierney had one of his better games as well the last evening. Maybe not, I know he got 2 points, but like he won an amount of kickouts. He's a great kickout option for Conor Gleeson to go to. So I think all will be taking a lot of positives from it and from the league itself and from the last night and just writing off those misses as one of them days we learn from and get it right the next day.
Yeah, because Gerry, even fourth, I know he said the 210, but he said even from a management perspective that he learned a lot about his players on Saturday night, which is good to be learning this time of year.
Oh yeah, look, I mean, I think every manager is learning, but again, it's probably situations. I mean, the pace went up a notch for me the last day, and again, Dublin sort of came just looked like that different animal, clucks them back in goals. They knew they had a bit of intent about them. The pace, going forward, they were, they're diving in for every break ball, and they just looked a different animal. So I mean, the pace has gone up, and that's probably where you learn a lot about players, and dealing with that sort of change in pace and intensity and stuff like that. And again, I think Porrick alluded to it after where he said even with this 11v11 tweak, that even the pace on the pitch was much higher. There wasn't that chance to sort of bring the goalkeeper up and slow it down and sort of break down the play. The ball was gone into the inside forward line, and fellas were taking men on one, and you're trying to get back out and recover during the game. There's just no forgiveness, I think, with this, and you probably have seen it, Carl. The first, what I've seen is the first sort of 15 minutes is just chaos. Then it sort of settles down for about 5 or 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and then kind of goes chaos again. You come in at halftime, you reset, you go back out, it's more chaos, and then lads are getting tired again, and it sort of just turns into a kind of there's just that lack of control, I suppose, and. But I think again it's a conditioning thing, and I think the inter-county lads are sort of getting up to it, and I'm really looking forward to the pace of it now at championship when it really goes up a notch, and
Yeah.
teams are properly conditioned, and
And the Crow
I
Park
think
factor, Jerry, I was saying it earlier
yeah,
on, but
massive, yeah,
like
massive,
Galway's, you compare what the conditions Galway played in against. Well, I was at the Armagh game, and it was the pitch was tough going. The Donegal game was there was a gale force, and again, harder pitch to play on. And suddenly up to Crow Park last night, and the surface is so good, it's so big, so. I think once, again, okay, the provincial championships, they'll be what they'll be, and then you'll get into the group stages. But like once teams start getting to Crow Park in that last kind of 16 quarterfinals, that's when we're really going to see it open up.
You're almost going back to Pearse Stadium this weekend, and if the weather isn't great, which is probably fairly likely, Pearse
Mm.
Stadium it turns into a sense of a lottery even, and you get a game in Croke Park at such high pace. Like there's big differences in both, like there will be big differences now between that Dublin and Kerry game.
Yeah, I mean, like there's so many permutations as well. Look, even injury wise now, like, if Shane Walsh has something small, do you save him for a few weeks' time for New York or Roscommon? Sean Fitzgerald seemed to have a shoulder issue as well. They whipped him off very quickly once he went down with that on the telly. It looked like Dylan McHugh was kind of talking to the physio as he was coming off. So look, I suppose they're going to be assessing all these things. You're going into play a Kerry team that probably, with the way Munster works out for them as well, they probably love a league final. Um, so it's now I remember was it 2 years ago Galway played Kerry in the last day of the league as
Yeah.
well, in Pearse Stadium that kind of early April time too, or late March. The weather was good. Galway bet them a couple of points that day. So like, I, it's a hard one to call anyway. I think this weekend, but just all of those decisions around injuries and like Galway's schedule is going to be a bit crazy now. And I agree with Gerry. Get to a league final, they probably would want to do, but if they if they get to a league final, you look at having played Dublin, Kerry, a league final, and New York 4 weekends in a row.
Mm.
And no matter what way they do it, you're traveling on a Friday, you're probably coming home late Monday night, early Tuesday morning from New York. You probably don't train really till Wednesday night, and now suddenly you're 9, 10 days out from playing Roscommon. So that I've no doubt Portage will want to go out and beat Kerry, get to a league final. I've no doubt about that. But just um, they are facing into a hectic schedule now, and it's not the time of the year you want to start picking up injuries either. Like they've had a good injury profile up to now, but it's not the kind of time you want to be starting to get in those little knocks and playing all these games then.
Gerry, even from looking at the Division One table at the minute, Go is still sitting top on 8 points, score difference plus 17. Dublin behind them, a score difference plus 8. Donegal in third, they're on plus 4. Then Mayo on 7 points on minus 3. They can all now still push for a league final. Galway win, they'll get into league final. They can draw and still get into league final, but if they lose, they could still get in there, but it probably is unlikely. So this weekend's game ultimately against Kerry really becomes a league semi-final.
Yeah, which is good. And look, the only criticism I have is that teams can't sort of go hell for leather to try and get into a league final and try and compete. I think teams now are starting to think about championship. Like, and as Carl said, the like really and truly Galway is, if they're safe, I think they're pretty safe. I think the next real important game for them now is they beat New York and they come back with everybody fit, and I think they get ready for their whoever they play in that. I think it's the winners of Roscommon and London, and they get ready for that game, and I think that's sort of where the business end starts for them. Like, and regardless of what happens between now and then, there's they're not going to get judged. I mean, if you asked you who won the league last year, I'm not even sure without doing any research. I don't know who won the league last year. Like, so I mean, really, does it matter? Who gets there now, other than staying safe in Division One. So and I think the fitness of all them sort of key players and trying to get them on the pitch has to be priority. I think and I think if Galway manage to get that, and I've no doubt that they will at some point, that's probably what their only thoughts are right now.
Does Keane O'Neill going to Kerry play a factor this weekend?
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought on that, but yeah, I like
Are
look at
Kerry
he'll
are
he'll
Kerry are Kerry safe? I mean, are Kerry
yeah
in a safe
yeah.
position now? They've kind of
They can still get relegated
Um,
if Tyrone and Irma were to win at the weekend and Kerry lose, Kerry will go down.
okay. So
right.
I would imagine Kerry would want to
Yeah,
just win that game and not
yeah,
leave anything to doubt. That's what I would say. That's in Kerry minds. And I mean, look, they always sort of start slow in the league, don't they? They don't they always sort of target the last 3 or 4 games. So I mean, for me, Kerry will probably go hard for this game. They'll probably play their strongest team. I'm sure Galway won't want to lie down either, but I'd say it's a big game for Kerry if there is a possibility that they could go down, because that would be a disaster for them, I'm sure.
yeah. Keane O'Neill too. He'll obviously know all the goal lads inside out, but I think there's enough changes and things to worry about with the new rules that it does mix it up a little bit, and any kind of patterns or little things that they would have worked on a lot with Keane over the last few years. I'm sure now there's a lot of changes in there because in many ways it's almost a different game. Whereas if you were still playing under the same rules, I'm sure there'd be lots of little things that he'd be able to try and stop. But look at it'll have a small factor, but I don't think it'll be a huge one.
Carl, just on this point, like obviously the target now is to get to a league final for Galway, and you consider the Kerry game now left as their last round 7 game if they get that to get the league final. Important this weekend to get a performance regardless for this Kerry game.
Yeah, that's look at you. Kerry coming into Pearse Stadium, Galway will want to perform well. That'll be one thing. And if you're looking down the line to July, there's a very high likelihood you have to come across a Dublin or a Kerry or whoever it is along the way. So go on, who's going to mark the Cliffords? Who's going to pick up different guys. Those little things, I think, anyway, within the setup itself, have a bearing for later on down the road. And I suppose even over the last few years, just thinking back to 22 and that league game in 23, Sean Kelly would have been picking up David Clifford a lot, and Sean probably plays out the field more in the middle eight. So things like Galway would have to have a think around who picks up Clifford and things like that. So I do think they're going to be looking for performance. No one poor choice. They're going to be looking for a win. They're going to want to get to that league final, and if they get there, they're going to want to win it. But just looking ahead to the schedule and the bigger picture, if you were not to win it, just as a fan, I think there's an upside as well to this team getting a bit of a break and being able to concentrate on championship. And it's just the fact that they have that travel. Like Roscommon have to go to London, and like they can do that in a 24 hour Saturday. They can be back in Roscommon Sunday. Whereas for Galway, it's a bigger thing, it's a bigger deal, it's a bigger occasion. There's lots going on out there, and coming out of a league final on a Sunday evening and then having to go down the road to Galway and do whatever preparations you can before you head off to New York. I can, I think if Galway come out of this weekend with a performance, maybe even a draw, a good performance, maybe missing out in the league final, I think in the long run they could look back on it and think that was actually a blessing in disguise. But I would say there is no doubt Pádraig Joyce will want to, and most of them lads on the squad too, they want to go to Croke Park again and they want to get silverware. That's why lads are playing football. But I do think a performance against Kerry would be something they'd be looking for.
Big one, obviously, this weekend, Gerry. But in fairness, Kerry probably looked the best they have looked throughout the league with that win over Armagh at the weekend.
Yeah, no, very, very impressive. I think again they looked hungry, but again there was probably huge jeopardy. They needed the points, a bit like Dublin. They looked like sort of everything sort of came together for them. They seemed to get the right players on the pitch. They looked like their system was kind of set up. They knew what they were doing. The kicking game sort of kicked into action. I would say they blitzed Armagh in many ways, with their scoring ability and look, obviously, it's this game is going to no more than it's going to suit Damien Comer and co. But you know, the Cliffords are just sort of having a bit of fun now with this extra bit of space. There's no double marking. They're taking their man on one, and some of the points, they were kicking at the weekend is, it's a joy to watch. And Kerry just loved that sort of kicking into the 10 and 12 box to get out from the fence. And that double kick where they're sort of turning and kicking into that space, and their movement is just phenomenal. And I think they've always tried to do that. The 15 back would have, trying to fill up all that space would have curtailed them a little bit. So, I just think now with the space and their running and their intelligence and their skill levels to kick the ball, I think this game is going to suit them more and more. And I thought that was the first against Armagh the weekend was the first time I'd sort of seen it now really starting to get, fluid, and I think it's just going to get better. And yeah, no, it'll be a good game because again, I think two very even teams, and Kerry physical, Galway are also very physical, and I think that kick out battle is going to be a big one actually against Kerry because I think
Did
Galway actually
Kerry
could have a.
did Kerry lose both midfielders towards the end of the game the last day? It looked like serious enough.
Yeah, that'll be a big one.
Yeah,
You see, yeah, I think I
yeah,
think I think the both of them went down. One went down holding a shoulder or something. I can't
yeah,
remember, but
yeah. There was
I
a
mean that
hand.
that
Yeah,
physical battle now that out around the middle now is so important. And Kerry aren't brilliant. It's not their strongest point when they don't have the players that the bigger guys, and that's where Galway probably could
yeah,
hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, the Diarmuid O'Connor one I'd say could be serious enough because everyone seems
yeah.
to kind of saying hopefully he'll be all right, and he didn't look too good coming off there, so maybe
No.
he might be up against it. Is this more important now to win, call going into the championship, not to get two defeats on the bounce for Galway?
Yeah, yeah. You could look at it that way, I suppose. Yeah, it's not the ideal way. If you look at our beloved neighbours up the road there in Mayo, they're maybe looking to finish on a little bit of a high, and maybe if Galway were to lose this, you're finished with two losses. But like I come back to what I said earlier on, Paul. I really feel that we by the time we get past a trip to New York, get into the kind of championship, start playing in these group games, which are obviously the last year of these, will have a whole new format next year on it. And then you get out into the knockouts. I do think some of these games will feel so far away that like for me now, I would imagine no matter what happens this weekend or in league final, I'd say Galway at some point. And Gerry mentioned about having a heavy block of training early on. I do think minds will start to focus on Roscommon pretty soon. It could even be as early as next Sunday evening once the Kerry game's out of the way. But like, look, you don't want to start losing games. But I do feel that the bigger picture for this team is the championship, and we've seen plenty of teams have great leagues. So look at Derry. Derry won it last year, and I think they've won one game since. You know, so
That was my question there.
it's
I wasn't even sure
yeah,
who won the
yeah,
league
yeah,
last year. Like, you know what I
yeah.
mean? And
Derry won
you
it.
know,
Yeah, yeah. Derry
you,
won it, and they've won one game since. So like that's where I think we can get caught up a bit too much in the week to the week of the league, and it's a brilliant competition. We all love it, and the games are on, and they're on telly, and you get to go to them and see Galway week on week. But I definitely it'll become less significant once we move on into the later weeks of the summer.
Jerry, how would you see the makeup of the Galway 15 this weekend? Like we talked, there could be a few knocks, there could be a few players out. Would you expect Cork to give more players opportunities this weekend, or more or less kind of stick with the 15 that played against Dublin?
it's a good question. Again, it really just depends on the mentality of the Galway management and what they feel is important to them. If a final is important to them, I would say that they'll put out their best, strongest team. Look what Jim McGuinness did last week. 11 changes, 11 starters, getting football into lads. I mean, I think McBrearty had said in an interview after a game that the magic number was 6 points. They got to 6 points, then they beat Derry, and then you know, um, they put out a team last weekend. Now he'd say obviously they didn't want to win it or whatever, but you don't start your 11 players for fun if you want to really win the game. So I mean they've changed tact, and I think they play the week after the league final against Derry, so it really doesn't suit them to go and play a league final. So I mean they've made their decision from a management perspective what they want out of it. So I think Porrick and team have to just decide exactly what suits them and what's best for Galway at this point. And if a league final is important, I mean, or if it's just the performance against Kerry and using that match as a sharpen, throwing everything at it to try and beat Kerry. I mean that's important, and if that performance is important, I think they'll try and get everybody onto the pitch. And look, I think there's a few fellas coming back. I think they, again, what I was saying, I think they'd like to have as many of their sort of starting team starting to gel now and get back playing together
Yeah.
and trying to get that bit of a flow going. And I think that would be important to them again. But I suppose injuries dictating, if Shane Walsh injured, or for me, I'd like to see Rob Finnerty start again and just sort of get that last performance out of his system, because I think he's going I think he's going to flourish in these new rules when he gets space. And having played that inside line and having a similar, many similar days on the pitch, all you want to do is get back onto the field as quick as possible and rectify those mistakes. So I'd love to see him get a start again and sort of kick a few points and sort of get his confidence back again. You know what I mean? So again, down to the management team and what what
Yeah,
what they feel is important for Galway now.
I definitely reckon he'll go as strong as he can, Paul. Park Joyce doesn't hand he doesn't hand out Galway jerseys to lads like on a whim. He just doesn't. That's we're long enough looking at his teams now. He goes as strong as he can at all times. He's not going to jeopardize a fella maybe injured or maybe carrying something. It'd be different if it was a championship game and you have to throw him in. I'd say Galway will go as strong as they can. And I would say get Damien Comer in for another 25 minutes or whatever like that the next day. And I think that's just Pádraig Joyce's way, and he's dead right. Like, and it's anyone that has gotten minutes now throughout the league, they're a massive benefit. But the closer we tick down to championship now, I just think Pádraig Joyce is going to go as strong as he can. And we Galway. It's rare you see a team like a week. I won't call it a weekend team, but like what Jim McGuinness did the last. You just don't see Galway really do that ever under Pádraig Joyce anyway. I'd say he'll go strong, and it'll be just a case then of go for the win, get into the final. I can just imagine Joyce will be delighted if they do, and deal with how they manage that logistically and everything. Then from there,
Yeah, we didn't see Keane Hernan, Sean McKern, John Daly in the
mm,
26, so maybe those three come back
mm.
in this weekend.
Yeah, we don't know either too who's got niggles or knocks or whatever like that, and it's a very competitive 26 to make now. That's
Mm.
the thing. There's guys, like that. Keane Hernan is someone I've been looking forward to seeing more of because he's just been so unfortunate with injury. Like even going back to the Dublin game, wasn't it? The Dublin game last year, he was brilliant in for Galway when he came on, and then had an unfortunate hand injury or whatever it was after that. So, look, those are guys that obviously we love to see and see get game time, but I don't think Warwick Joyce operates that way. I think he'll just be looking at as strong a team as he can get out from the start. He'll probably have minutes in mind for guys like Damien Comer and stuff like that, but Warwick Joyce wants to win every game that Galway play in, and I think if guys are looking for minutes and stuff like that, they might find it hard to get them unless they're fully deserving of them.
Just as well as the Connacht Under 20 Championship begins this Wednesday. Mayo, Roscommon, and Leitrim Galway Sligo with the bye this weekend. Manager Derek Savage has announced his panel, and his panel is as follows: Stephen Curley from Annadown, then five players from Clare Galway: Killian Walsh, Éanna Monaghan, Owen Morgan, Ryan Flaherty, and Jack Lonergan. Kyle Gilmore of Corteen Shamrocks, Port Godwin of Milltown, Patrick Caney, Clifton, and then two representatives then from Salton Knocknacara, Derek Neely, and Vice Captain Mark Mannion. Matthew O'Donnell, who was central to Oncar's junior title in the All Ireland series, he's part of the panel. Colin Costello of Dunmore, he captains the team, and Keane Dolan of Monavea Abbey is on the panel. Along with Athenrise, Sen and Tracy. Then there's a large representative then for more and more Mary, Ciara McDonough, Harry Duffy, Harry Keady, Derek Cleary, and Ryan O'Donnell. Ciara Mulhern, who's played obviously minor for Galway in the past few years from Montpellier Law. He's part of the panel as well. Keane Marks and Ryan Joyce of Killannon. Then Kerr Finn, six players in total. Keane Raftery, Killian Joyce, Shane Canavan, Gavin Kelly, Ross Cohn, and Vinnie Gill. Sean Dunn of Berna, Mikey Mulryan of Caltra. Then two from Mike Cullen in Owen Maguire and Sean O'Connor. Keane Mitchell of Menlaw. And then two from Stairs, Jack Heenan and Shane McGlinchky. Shane McGlinchky is obviously ruled out at the minute. He picked up a serious enough injury. Gerry, even from looking last year at the Connacht Under 20 campaign and what Leitrim did, it looks set again this year to be a really competitive championship.
Yeah, it's turning into a really good competition, to be fair. And look at our own Sligo here have sort of really our Sligo County Board have really sort of invested in it, and put some a lot of resources into sort of developing the players at that level, and sort of it's paying off a little bit in terms of our Sligo success over the last few years. But I mean, there is very little between games. I've watched a few of them, over the last, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, closely, and it's just really, really competitive. And it's great to see. And I suppose there's a lot of players getting nurtured at that level now that we're probably going to see start to stream into the senior setups, which is brilliant. And I suppose that's what it's designed for. It's just unfortunate, I suppose, that I think Leitrim had sort of said this weekend that it was going to impact them, and the way they put out teams. And I think they've tweaked the rules a little bit to allow sort of senior players
Mm.
play, at the weekends and be available then on the Wednesdays, which I think is a great thing, because I think at that age, if they're if they're recovering properly, they should be well able to sort of play the two games in the weekend. I remember back even when we were underage, we were just looking forward to playing at our own level, but also, trying to play at the senior level as well. So, I mean, I think that's a great change that's in the competition now. So, yeah. So look again, and I think you couldn't pick from any of the teams at the moment as to who's probably going to come out on top. So, yeah, it's a really competitive championship, probably the most competitive around, I'd say at the minute, is it?
Yeah, for sure. Even when you see last year, all the different permutations for the teams even to get to the conference final. Call like last year was probably disappointing the way the twenties finished in that Connacht final against Roscommon coming up
Mm.
short, but like there is a real excitement with this team because obviously a large proportion of this team won the All Ireland minor title a few years ago.
Yeah, won the All Ireland, and yet in saying that, weren't they beaten by Mayo twice
Yeah,
on the way to that because they lost them in the group, they lost them in the kind of final, and then they bet them then later on down the line. So look, I wouldn't profess to know a huge amount about, we'll say, the other counties at this grade. Just only going on that minor year because we had three lads from my Cullen Bob that year, and just watching from the outside, I know that you can take nothing for granted in this particular year, for these lads within Connacht, and then just within that, then just going. I was looking at the squad as well that they announced today, and there's a lot of good club players from the club scene there that have been shown their goods at senior level over the last couple of years, like the Costello lad there from John Moore as captain. Like he was when we come up against John Moore last year, he was excellent, really, really good player. So obviously the Shane McGlinchey from Tune, if he's going to be out for a bit of time, he's a huge loss to them now. And that is the thing at level too. I mean, someone of his caliber being available to you or not being available to you can make a huge difference. But just from the bit of knowledge, I would have been involved with our own minors in that same year, then in 22, and we had won the county title and we lost, or sorry, Besh, Clare Galway in the final. And I just know a number of them names that you've called out there. Like there's a lot of good footballers there. So I'm sure, and with Derek Savage in charge, and it also being his second year as well, he's probably a lot more familiar with the whole thing now. So I think Galway kind of great hopes going into it, but there's absolutely like it'll be a real it'll be a very tight competition because all of those counties in Connacht have good squads.
yeah. Interestingly too, Jack Grogan, the former Armagh footballer, who transferred to Tunes in the backroom team for the
Oh,
twenties. So it's an interesting development there.
mm.
But the 20s get their campaign away to Leitrim on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, and then the seniors host Kerry in their final Allianz League game, 3:45 on Sunday in Pearse Stadium. But that's all we do have time for on this evening's show. Thanks a million to Gerry and Cathal for coming on.